Grayson's grades are posted after every Eagles game, and he's got them right now on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. Scotty, I got to ask you, what was the atmosphere like in that stadium? I know you guys are in the press box and you can't really hear, but the ebbs and flows of that game, it had to be a very tense fourth quarter there.
It was an amazing it was just a crazy game. I mean, I'm sure you felt that way feeling at home, but there in the stadium too as well. I mean, you could just kind of hear the air taken out of the stadium as the Giants eventually took that 21-14 lead. And then as it went down to that last kick, you hear and you see the fans just standing and watching and waiting, and all the players on the field of the knee. And the second that the officials looked at each other to confirm that it went through and put their arms up, I mean, the place just exploded. You could almost feel the stadium move with all the cheering and I think the disbelief, in fact, that it went in. I think everybody, including the players that I talked to after the game, were preparing themselves mentally for overtime. And I think the fans were kind of doing the same thing, but what a crazy way to end that game.
Let's get your take. Obviously, there's so many plays in this game that kind of defined what kind of a great game this was. But we'll start off with the A's because they win the game. Jake Elliott. I'm assuming there are certain guys on that team who literally have not spoken to this kid yet.
Yeah. I mean, you'd hear some of them talk about that, like Lane Johnson was saying, well, I've talked to him before, but it's just I'm talking trash to him in practice because we're just trying to prepare him for situations like what he faced yesterday. And he kind of like, well, I guess it worked, and now I'll talk to him a little bit more. But, it was just kind of funny because as we walked into the locker room, you can hear guys just kind of like, yo, Jake, I've never walked into that locker room before really and heard anybody even acknowledge that the kicker's in the room, let alone, say his name. So you know what it meant to them. You could tell how excited they were for this kid. And, they know where he was 3 weeks ago. They know he was a practice squad guy. And here he was winning a game for them. And I, that wasn't lost. Now, they're going to be businesslike and they're back to work today. Tomorrow, I guess, when they get back in the building and some of them watching film today. But they enjoyed that one. And they're definitely not going to forget, him or what he did in that situation.
He's a pretty small guy, Scott, right? I mean, can you kind of paint a picture for the listeners? What's he? Seriously, he's like 5'6" or something like that.
Yeah,
I read
160 pounds.
Yeah, I think the only person perhaps shorter than him in the locker room is Darren Sproles, and now he's not going to be there, but he is. I mean, he's just like he would be walking. I mean, seriously, he could probably walk down the street as long as he's not wearing that jersey, and nobody would know who he is because he does not look like he's an NFL player. And granted, most kickers don't necessarily look that way, and it's amazing that he has the power he has in his leg because he isn't a tall guy. Yet he's got distance on those kicks. I don't know that would have been good from 62, but he was good from 61, and most NFL teams, if not all of them, will definitely take that.
Yeah, just inside the upright there. It looked like it almost even kind of maybe just grazed it, just slid across it the first time I saw it, but just an unbelievable make there for Jake Elliott.
So, Scott, you got our Grayson's grades for us. How did you grade the left guards? That was a big topic of discussion for all three of us going into the game. How did the left guards grade out?
Yeah, I mean, that's a position that's certainly got to be figured out in some way, shape, or form. I mean, Chance Warmack I gave an F to. Just didn't start the game well at all. It was reminiscent to me, honestly, of almost to the scale that Big V had when he first came into the game last year and got his first start. Granted, he was a rookie, and Warmack's got some experience in this league, but Warmack was just getting beat, and honestly, the Giants were – I think the big reason the Eagles went 3-and-out in their first couple drives was because of some missed blocks by Warmack. And so that didn't go well. Obviously, I give credit to the coaching staff for saying, you know what, we need to get him out of there. And it's just funny to me that Wisniewski's like the guy who just keeps his head down and keeps doing his job and just keeps thinking, when am I going to get my shot? And when he does, he seems to do a pretty good job. And then they're going to go away from him. I just have this feeling they're not going to give Wisniewski the start this week. And he just said, well, what do I have to do, right? I mean, I gave him a B, Wisniewski, because I thought he came in and really provided some stability at the position that clearly was anything but that, from, say, Amalu last week to Warmack this past game, and then Wisniewski coming in. And they went back to Warmack early in the second half and then went back to Wisniewski again. I think, you got to commit to somebody here. And right now, I would do it with Wisniewski. I mean, he's a veteran, and the other guys around him really seemed to kind of play their positions better once he was in the game.
Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. We're talking with Scott Grayson on Grayson's Grades. I know, Scott, that I talked earlier about, well, Doug was dumb, but Ben McAdoo's an idiot. You gave a D to a certain somebody that made a few head-scratching calls.
Yeah, and it's funny listening to Peterson kind of defend his decision to go for it on 4th and 8 again. Look, I mean, you're down near the end of the half there. It's knowing how pathetic the Giants' offense can and has been this season. I don't understand why you give them half, or even run the risk of giving them half the field. I turned to John McMullen in the press box and I said, if this was 4th and 5 or less, I might understand. But I mean, 8 yards is a long way to go, and then you get sacked on top of it. I thought that was a boneheaded call there because you're leading 7-0. At the very least, you should be thinking we're going into the locker room with the lead. You got a good punter. Let him pin the Giants deep and make them go all the way down the field, which, up to that point, they hadn't done it all. And, I just thought that was a crazy call. I also really questioned the decision to challenge that punt at the beginning of the game when, we're less than 3 minutes in, and the Eagles played hot potato with it at the goal line. Quite frankly, they didn't deserve to have it there if they can't figure that out. And Doug Peterson threw the challenge flag and lost the timeout less than 3 minutes into the game. Now, it didn't really cost them because they weren't looking for a timeout late in the first half. However, it's those kind of mistakes in games against really good teams, or dare I say a playoff game, that could really be the difference in whether they win or lose. And I just don't see him grasping the gravity of some of those decisions. He was, you're right, against the buffoon on the other sideline in this game who made his own mistakes. But when you're against a good coach who knows what he's doing and managed the game better than McAdoo was, I just question whether or not he's really grabbing onto the gravity of some of these calls.
Scott Grayson, 97.3 ESPN.com. Grayson's grades after every Eagles game. I want to kind of make this a two-pronged question. The secondary, a lot of guys, missing yesterday, and you graded out a lot of guys in the B-C range. You had Mills, you had Douglas, you've got Patrick Robinson, but you wrote about how the mounting injuries are really going to test this team all of a sudden. I mean, how they got through the game yesterday, you got to give a lot of credit to the depth to get through yesterday, playing without some of the guys who didn't play because of previous injuries, and then guys they lost in the middle of that game. But are they going to be able to overcome defensively the amount of injuries that are starting to pile up?
Yeah, I don't know that they will, particularly because of the guys that are getting injured now. I mean, they've weathered the ones on the outside pretty well. You can't ask Chris Maragos to have to start too many games and come up for you. And he, honestly, the long touchdown to Sterling Shepard, I think, was potentially Maragos' fault on a bad angle. You never know, but I'm guessing McLeod makes that play. But the ones that are going to concern me are Fletcher Cox and Jordan Hicks, two of your key guys right up the middle, and two of the key guys that Jim Schwartz really counts on. Now, the Giants hadn't scored until Fletcher Cox came out of the gate. So all of the floodgates kind of opened for them offensively against the Eagles when he went out. And, you've got Bo Allen coming in, you've got Elijah Qualls who was playing. They're not Fletcher Cox, and he's a really tough guy to replace. Rasul Douglas has done an excellent job filling in, I think. Jalen Mills certainly was giving cushion to Odell Beckham Jr. and should have yesterday, but honestly didn't really commit any major mistakes against Beckham. Beckham just kind of got his. And, I was impressed with these guys, and I think they'll be able to withstand some of it on the outside. But losing the guys up the middle is the one that concerns me. And I know Doug Peterson said today they're day-to-day. But these guys have a mentality that they're ready to play. There is, and I didn't think it was just, coach speak or just verbiage from the players to say something that they might not believe. I truly believed Michael Kendricks, Malcolm Jenkins, when I was talking to them about how much they believe in these other guys to come in and play. Look, Joe Walker came in and made a huge play yesterday on 4th and goal. And he's, granted not coming in to start, but he's certainly spelling some other guys who needed a blow and made a huge play. So I don't think there's enough credit given to the depth on this defense because it's something we all thought was a weakness. And so far, it looks like it's kind of been able to withstand the storm. We'll see whether or not, as the season continues, they're able to continue doing that because I think it's been impressive. They've won 2 division games with the injuries they've suffered on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I saw Joe Walker. I was like, is Kiko Alonso back on this team? What's going on out there? Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Scott Grayson's grades, of course, after every Eagles game, and more on the Birds at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, pal. We'll talk to you soon.
You got to have a good one, guys.